Okay, recording in progress. Good afternoon, everybody. We are going to have a quick impromptu fireside chat, and we'll talk about bike fitting and bike fitting education. We just finished another class, and just wanted to kind of share with people what type of students I'm getting in my classes. The first type is bike shop owners. We're really not getting any employees. The owners are taking some of the courses from us, learning the bike fitting, and then opening up that bike fit studio within their bike shop. The second group of people, by far the largest, are physical therapists. I'm getting a lot of physical therapists from primarily the Midwest and the East Coast. They are telling me that there's no bike shops around where they're at, or they want to augment their studio with a new technology where they can continue level of care for the patients that they have. The third set of people are the personal trainers, the yoga instructors, the personal coaches. There's a lot of people that do work with NICA. They want to know how to fit the juniors on mountain bikes. There's other trainers that have classes at their studio. They'll go on a run one day, they'll go on a bike ride the next day. So they want to make sure everybody's fit on the bicycle. And we did get one chiropractor. So that's kind of our classes in general, how they're laid out. We have one kind of an outlier. we had a real PhD at a major university that took the course, and just wanted to have her share her story with you as to why she signed up, what is her love of cycling, why did she want to get into bike fitting as well. She took the class, graduated, and she's hard at work fitting family members, getting practice, and going forward. So with that, let me introduce Dr. Sue.
Hi, my name's Sue Rowland. Yes, I have a PhD and I'm a neuroscientist in my job. But the reason I took this course is that I have a really long-standing interest in cycling. And it has mostly driven all of my vacation time. All of that time has been spent riding all over the world on various trips hosted by different travel groups. And throughout all of that time, I was always aware that while I loved cycling, I didn't know very much about bicycles. And I certainly knew what would happen if it didn't fit well. And I had struggled with different issues that sort of definitely reduced my pleasure in riding. So it kind of made sense that since I absolutely was enamored with bicycles, it was logical to try to learn more about them. And so in this case, I had also thought about, and it still isn't off the table, but bike mechanics is very interesting to me. It's a small part of bike fitting. And so I decided that bike fitting, though, would be the most useful skill to try to master so I could help the people around me first to get onto a bicycle that didn't hurt them. And it turns out that there are very few bicycles you can buy in a shop that are going to fit everyone. Probably 10% of the people that go into a bike shop really do not get fit well with a bike off the floor. And my family has various sized individuals. They're very tall, they're very not tall. And so it is now possible for me to actually help them make intelligent decisions. So if we go to a bike store, I can be much more helpful in terms of directing them to the bike they should buy.
Mm-hmm. So
I
how
might
did you?
actually do this though. Like I haven't retired yet. And there's this other thing, and this could be something I do once I retire from being a professor.
So how was the bike fit education course? What was your thoughts coming into it, and then during it, and then after we finished?
Okay, well, I wasn't quite sure how it was going to go, but material is sent to the students about a month or a month and a half ahead of time. There's because of the diversity of students, the packet material that you're supposed to actually try to become familiar with before the course starts includes a bunch of human anatomy pretty much below the waist. So you understand the musculature involved in cycling. And then the second packet is focused sort of on really basic bike, not mechanic stuff, but the most important parts of a bicycle. You know, how the stem, the seat post, how do you change the seat angles. And so it doesn't go into great depth there, but it is helpful. And then the other thing that's included in that is becoming familiar with all of these tools. So if you're kind of into tools like screwdrivers, and for me, it was the torque wrench. I had never used a torque wrench, and so it was, or even a, what is it, a square angle laser. So that was part of it. That was kind of interesting. And then finally, there's programs that you use to help you measure bike angles or people angles on bicycles. And it turns out that those are really, really important in terms of making a good fit. So all that happens before the class, which, you know, could be overwhelming. So you have to plan ahead a little bit. And you should do it, because if you don't, the class is only like 3 days and it's a lot of stuff. So if you do the pre-work, you'll be able to sort of handle what comes during the class.
Yeah, and the reason we do the pre-course, let me take even a step back, further back. Our class, bike fitting is education, is through Zoom. And the reason is because, again, like I said, most of our students, 80% of our students are physical therapists, and every one of them has told me, if you offer a Zoom class, I can take it. If you don't, I'm not going to take it. And the reason is because I have my own patients. I cannot afford a day off for travel, 3 days off for the course, and a day to come back. That's 5 days off. By doing Zoom, I can see my patient before the class, and I can see patients after the class. So this is why we still do Zoom. So for the last about 4 years, we fine-tuned this. I've listened to all the feedback coming in and have incorporated it. And I think we got a really good mix. And the reason for the pre-work is, if you think about it, the bike shop mechanics or the owners will come in. They know everything about tools and maintenance and how to put a stem on the bike and adjust a saddle, recommend saddles, etc., for the ones that they carry. They know nothing about anatomy. And the physical therapists, who have taken 8 years of anatomy and kinesiology and biomechanics, some of them don't know which end of the screwdriver to use for the stems. So this helps everybody that comes in to be on the same plane, same level, so we can hit the ground running. And we're going to modify the next course a little bit. We're going to get a little bit more of the angles. I'm going to send that out also. And basically, so you're able to do, so what Sue was saying is that you now understand what tools you're going to need and kind of how to use them and then you're going to practice with a software. We got Android-based software. We got iPad, iPhone-based software, and PC-based software. And the most expensive one is $9.99 for the full-blown iPad version, which most people pick that one up because it does the most. It's does dynamic fitting, real-time angle tracking, and things like that. So they get familiar with the tools, the software tools. They'll do a couple of practice fits, and then we'll discuss that when the class starts. So everybody's up and running, and then we get into the instruction, and then we get into more in-depth fitting as we go forward. That's the reason the way the class is laid out the way it is. So, Sue, how have some of the fits gone after the class? You fit yourself and maybe some other people.
Yeah, no, the information that you learn doesn't actually sort of come together in a logical way until you actually start to do fitting or try to go through the process that you teach. So you kind of have to, figure that out. But then once you start doing it, there was a minute when I think I started on myself, and I fit myself to both my road bike and the Wahoo Kicker bike, and they're different, but they're a lot the same. And so you go through the steps to figure out where your seat position, knee height, seat height, and various other things are to try to optimize angles and position of the knee. And once you kind of go through that a few times, it becomes very logical. It's not. I'm not going to say it's not hard, but it is. It is a process. You describe it as a process, but until you do it, it isn't a process. So you need to practice. And I have a family member who has some extreme issues that requires multiple approaches to try to fit. And so that individual sort of has taught more to me about the kinds of things you would do that you probably wouldn't see very often.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's valuable to see those individuals if you can, because there are materials and ways to solve problems that you would never even know about. Adjustable crank arms, for example. I mean, I had not seen these, and they're actually very interesting in terms of how they work, and using more shims as an option too in cleats or underneath cleats between the cleat and the shoe. What else can you do? Well, the positioning of the saddle too. In the case that I'm talking about, one of the consequences of the problem is that there's more rocking of the hips. So when you walk around the back of the bike and you look and you go, that's probably not right. And so you do these things to see what happens. And if you have any curiosity about consequences and actions, I mean, the one thing that was really surprising to me, which I guess isn't if I think about it, is we put shims in, right? And the idea was to make the leg lengths more equal. And logically, I thought, oh, well, if we do that, then there shouldn't be as much rocking. But that wasn't really true. So I was like, well, that didn't do exactly what I wanted. And so when you're doing bike fitting, it is a little bit like playing with recipes and adjusting them in various ways to have an outcome, but it might not be the way you think it's going to work from the start. So by taking the course, you get a sort of a broad introduction to different strategies. It's not until you try them and then see the consequences right in front of your face that you actually start to really appreciate what it does. And so we do in the class, we do interactive fitting between the students a bit, and that sort of helps you see how the cause and effect works out. But yeah, it's a continual process. I don't think I'm going to know. I mean, I guess I'll know enough when I feel like I've seen a lot. But I might have to go out on the street corner and offer free fits because most people do not know anything about this. And I'll tell you one last thing. when you ride, if you're riding virtually or riding outside, you notice things now that you probably didn't even think about. So you're watching every little rider, and you're watching how their angles are, moving, and you're watching how their posture is, and you're watching whether their knees are flaring. And so it sort of brings this sort of more intense analysis of fellow riders that you're going to engage in that you wouldn't normally do. So
Yeah, we basically, like Sue mentioned, we teach a process here. As long as you stick with the process, you're not going to get mixed up as to where you can always go back a step, because we do this first until it's done, and then we move on to this, and then we do this until it's done. And there is some back and forth.
yes, there is.
There's I think Sue on both her bikes, she hit the trifecta. The trifecta is what we always see: stems are too long, saddles are too narrow, and cranks are too long. That's what we see on most fits. And you went down to a smaller stem on both your bikes. Now you can actually reach the bars. We discussed another thing is that, in fact, I just had another lady come in yesterday for a fit here. Once you get into talking in depth doing the interview, it turned out that she bought some new shoes. She's getting faster on the bike. She had SPDs on a Giant Live Veil, I think was the bike. She wanted to get a new pair of shoes, and she went through the whole story about arguing with the salespeople over Specialized, and they wanted to do this. They wanted to sell her the new Torches, and she said, "No, I want the sales shoes," which was last year's S-Works, for like 50% off. So she finally got those. Got the great shoes. They sold her the wrong insoles. So we discussed what she needs to do to fix that. So it turns out that once we got that fixed, then she had some other things that we had to discuss as well. Primarily, again, they're going to use the bike fitter to bounce a lot of their ideas off of. Toward the end, she goes, "Oh, by the way, I want to get a new bike. What do you think? What do you think of this?" And so she's getting faster. She's kind of outgrown the original frame that she has. She wants to get, she's now beating some of the guys in this group that she's in, and she's rocking a little bit in the saddle too. And she's gone down to, I think she has 155 cranks as well. She got the rotor cranks, 155, but how she's pedaling, again, what Sue was talking about, you can analyze people while they're riding. She seems to rock on her hips. We adjust the saddle up and down slightly within a safe range, joint angles on the safe range. But that's just how she pedals. She basically is pushing from 12 o'clock all the way through 6 to 7 o'clock. So she's pushing all the way down and rocking a little bit. And so that's why she's going on the saddle. Most people, if you actually analyze the cyclists when they come in, they're pushing about from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So there's very little hip rocking because they're not putting a lot of power or a lot of movement into the bike. Whereas you get somebody that's going from 12 to 6, the whole half of the pedal stroke is all under power. And people are going to pedal a little bit differently. So she got a shorter stem. She loves the narrow bars. She's a little on the shorter side. She went with 36 bars, 36 wide, which are kind of hard to find. You can get 38s are easier to find, but she wanted those. So we talked about the bike. The reach is more critical than the length. She's longer legs than torso. We talked about she wants to get another Giant, the new Live series versus the TCR. What's the difference? Well, primarily all of the bikes in those two lines are very similar when you go bike to bike. It turns out that the men's /TCR or the women's Legamo or something like that, it's the women's is about a 1/4 inch shorter reach and So the men's will be a 1/4 inch longer reach, and the men also has one size wider bars. Men have usually a little wider shoulders than women, so they get the that's as I told her, that's it. That's the difference on the two bikes. The same wheel, same components. You have to also be sensitive, which this was actually phase 2 for Sue. We talked about phase 1, where as we get older, it's not as easy to move the shift levers over, especially the front derailleur. So we talked about going Di2 on her next bike, and that's going to solve a lot. She has arthritis in both wrists, the lady that came in yesterday, and the Di2 is going to fix, help with that. So it's really not only the bike fitting, but the whole package you're putting around supplying and supporting the customer. And like Sue was saying, is that you have somebody that has a leg length discrepancy. They had, I think, knee surgery at one point in time, and it's there's a little leg length difference. Getting into that, so there's a little give and take on some of that, but it is ultimately important that we discuss the crank lengths. And if you don't have the right crank lengths, everybody you can't get the person fit correctly on the bike to alleviate the knee pain, to maximize the power output. And in fact, our next video, which we're going to work on, we're going to come out with Tuesday, is we have one of the PTs that took my last bike fitting class, and he's going to talk a little bit about how muscles work, why they work better mid-range. So that's where you want to keep the people. You don't want to have real long cranks and they're always exercising at the end range. You don't have the power based on the biomechanics of how the muscles work. So we're going to get into that a little bit. It should be interesting. With that, I think Sue, you went to you took the cranks off your old bike, and if you want to have a shout out to Wahoo right now, tell them what you really think about why they don't have the right size cranks on the kicker bike to support women.
Yeah.
Or shorter men.
No, it's kind of a it's a big frustration at this point. So my road bike is really good. It has 155 millimeter crank arms. It has a short stem. It has a 155 millimeter saddle. It has Di2. It's basically perfect. Okay, so now I'm inside on my Wahoo bike, which I really truly love. However, I put a new stem on it. I put a new saddle on it. I don't need, well, it already has Di2, which is sort of interesting. That's kind of how I knew this would work. And then it has adjustable crank arms. However, you can only get to 165.
Yeah.
And that is too long. It's about centimeter too long, actually. And so I'd like 155s. I cannot put them on that bike. So I'm not alone. My family member would like it even shorter than that. He would do better on like a 140, 145. So what we need is Wahoo has an adjustable crank arm that is sold with the bike. And it goes from 172.5 to 165.
I think 175 is on there too.
175. Oh, well, then it's even worse.
Yeah, they can, my opinion, they can throw that out, and they can
right. No, so
something else in there.
Rick and I he remodeled and figured out how you could actually re-engineer this arm, and you would either give it as an option to the person, because these bikes are pretty expensive, and so it would be worth their time and help probably over half of their customers if they would offer a modified crank arm that allowed you to get down to 155.
Shorter, you got to get at least to 150, at least to
150. Okay, so that's what I want. That's what I want. And it turns out that there's, you run into possible options, but they really don't work easily with the Wahoo kicker the way it's set up. So that's what I have to say. If they're out there, they should be listening. There's a huge population of users who love this bike, but it isn't fitting the way it needs to, and eventually we will all have hurt knees.
Exactly.
I mean, it's coming, you
So
know.
Wahoo, give us a call. We'll tell you how to fix this thing right. And
Well, it would be it would be very customer forward. It would be the first time, the first bike, probably of all bikes, to actually recognize that this is an important feature that is often neglected and needs to be addressed.
exactly,
And
exactly.
it's simple for them to do it, really is.
Yeah. Yeah, to tell you this, last year I did over 300 Peloton fits, remote Peloton fits, and every one of them was a 5 foot, 5'1", 5'2", 5'3" female, and some males in there were 5'4", 5'5". With the 175 cranks, every one of those had knees were flaring up. They couldn't ride the bike anymore. And they said, if either you fix me or I'm going to send this thing back to Peloton because I can't ride it the way it is. So that's how important cranks are. Give you one more example. A good friend of mine, Big Bill Thomas, he teaches kinesiology at Cal State Fullerton. A couple of years ago, he was California State Cat 2 individual time trial champion. So nobody in California that was Cat 2 was faster than him. 6'3", and he used 155 cranks on his Trek time trial bike. So tell you how important, you can't argue with that. Again, Cat 2 state champion, you can't argue with the results, and he had the right, he's set up right. So like Sue said, it is so important to get the crank sizes right first, and then my philosophy is then you build the rest of the bike fit around that crank set. Then
Well, then
everything
it's
else,
pretty easy. I mean, it can work.
it can work.
It's doable. But if you can't do that, you're kind of stuck at
Yeah,
this
yeah.
point. You're doing what you can, but it's just not optimal. So yeah, I'm waiting. Every time I get on it, I go, it's not quite right. It's not quite right.
Shimano slowly dipping their toe in the water. They got
160.
160s now, which is good. They're in the right direction. Just keep going. It's sad for Shimano and SRAM. SRAM is a 165 still, but it's sad for these main manufacturers because I say go to Rotor. You know, Shimano doesn't make it short enough. Go to Rotor. Or go to Cobb. Cobb makes a quality down to 145. Speedandcomfort.com is John Cobb's. If you want to get the right size cranks, if you want to do the bike fit right, do it this way. One more little story. A guy came in about 2 years ago. He bought his friends were out riding the road. He bought a used 2014 S-Works Tarmac. Specialized tarmac. He was really far off on his fit. He was having some issues. Young guy comes in, got him set accordingly. I said, you know, you need to take these 172 and a half off of this thing. You need 165. So went out, got 165s, reset him back up on the bike. He came back, didn't hear anything from him. 2 years later, he came back about 4 months ago. He called me, said, hey, I bought now my friends are doing mountain biking. So he went out and found a used S-Works mountain bike. So got the mountain bike, really light, really nice bike. He was taking it off of his car and he says, before you say anything, I already put 165s on the mountain bike. So, okay, good work. I want you to set it up exactly like the tarmac. So he came in. I said, well, tell me about the tarmac. What happened? He goes, well, I didn't really want to say anything, but I went out we probably raised his saddle after the 165 cranks. We probably raised his saddle over 3 inches. So I told him to take it easy on the next few rides, let the body adapt. Of course, he's a young guy. He's pretty strong. He overdid it a little bit that next ride. He said, everything, it was the worst ride he'd ever done. It was horrible. Nothing fit him right. And he said, maybe it's just me adapting to it. I'll go out. That was a Saturday. I'll go out on Sunday. Well, you're not going to adapt in one day. It's going to take a little bit of time. He said Sunday was even worse because he was sore from Saturday. His body wasn't used to the new fit, and he had a horrible ride. So he has a friend that's on a U.S. Continental team, semi-pro team. Called his friend up, and he said, "Hey, explain to him what happened." And his friend said, "Well, what did the bike fitter do?" And he goes, "Well, he did this and this and this." He said, "Well, it sounded like he did everything right." He thought for a minute. He goes, "I'm going to tell you 4 words. Give it 2 weeks." And he said, "You see that tarmac that's on the car right now?" I said, "Yeah, that's the same one you had before." He said, "Yeah, the 2014. The only reason I have not bought a new bike is I don't think anybody could get the new bike fit as comfortable as this current bike is. It is unbelievable. I can do 200 miles. I'm not sore. I can put 400 watts out for an hour, and it's butter smooth. Nobody could get it better than what it is right now. So it's going to take little tip here for the bike fitters. It's when you make big adjustments, work with the customer, and you just got to take a little bit of time, a couple weeks sometimes, depending on how much they ride. If they ride twice a week, it could take 4 weeks, 6 weeks, but it's going to take some time for the body to adapt to a new fit that is now correct. So work with a customer, work with a client, get some feedback from them. Don't just drop them off and never hear from them again. Give them a call, give them a email. You want to know how things are going, because guaranteed, if you get them fixed up, the next time they buy a bike or the next time they buy a pair of shoes, they're going to come and see you to get them set up, period. So they're not going to trust anybody else, only you, the bike fitter. So that's kind of the little moral of the story.
No pressure.
No pressure. So any parting words, Sue?
No, I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing. And I'm helping a friend who doesn't have a bicycle yet. She just doesn't ride, but she has been watching Ruby and Wahoo, or what we've been doing, and she wants to do this in the worst way. So I said, okay. So she lives, in Florida, which is far away, sort of. So I said, okay. And so she found a bike fitter, and I said, well, if you go see this person, I will then look at what you've done and try to help you tweak it a bit, because I'm becoming very familiar with the kicker bike. Yeah, and I think you can do that over Zoom. I think you can take the videos, do the analysis. She's another PhD, so it shouldn't be a problem.
PhD in computer science. There you go.
But no, she's actually an agricultural engineer.
Oh, okay.
She does a lot of that. But I think it's interesting how attractive it can be for someone who hasn't done it. So she's an interesting case because she doesn't know anything at all. Like, she hasn't really ridden bikes. So for me, I made a list. First thing I said, these are the things you really do need to have. And we'll see how that goes.
So last question, what's the most important tool in the toolbox?
Your brain. You need to be able to solve problems. But I do think probably the torque wrench.
The torque wrench. That's what I'm going to say. Yeah, the torque wrench is your friend and the bike's friend. Yeah.
No, it is. It gives you confidence about how you're tightening the bolts. There's a lot of bolts, and so it is. I like that, but you need to be able to solve problems.
Yeah, and it's fun. After a while, it becomes fun and enjoyed. You're helping other people out. I get the biggest kick out of when they go test ride it up and down the road. They come back with the biggest smile on their face that, man, this thing is actually comfortable. I can ride it. So it's a
yes,
almost a life-changing moment. Yes.
It is. I have had that happen. So it's exciting. It is changing. And so when I hear people who are reluctant to change, and I know the change would likely help them, I'm just, ooh.
Yeah. Yep. So. It is. Well, thank you very much for the little talk here, and we'll see you out on the Ruby Road.
Yes, you will.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.